Hello, everybody. This moment finds me, I think, much as in my previous little videos of a week ago, in the midst of bad weather, difficult weather, snow, heavy snow, first a blizzard, and now every alternate day we have snow. And on the other day, we have blue skies and sunshine, some most bizarre weather. But I hope this finds you whenever it finds you and wherever it finds you. Anyone listening in, I hope this finds you safe. Um, the primary, the premise for these videos is a tutorial directed to a wonderful student of mine who currently lives in Hawaii, a very nice place to be, a very proper place to be, while so much of the world is getting ravaged by illness and is destabilized by our fear of this rampaging virus, which I hope you are avoiding. And so far, I am semi-immunized myself. I have had one shot of the two, and my family all seem to be, for the moment, intact. So it's still a viable moment to consider the history and meaning of theatre, even though, as we speak, as I record this, theatre is the thing that isn't happening, rather like film, the specialized circumstances in which you could get a theatre audience together, let alone a cast to rehearse at the proper socially distance, the proper social distance from each other, would render rehearsal almost impossible, and it would be rather sad to think that theatre would do as some sporting arenas do, which is for every 3 or 4 seats, there are 2 or 3 cardboard figures sitting there between the people who have actually bought a ticket, have been allowed to buy a ticket, and the next person, the next ticket, human ticket holder, as opposed to the effigies in between you. But from the field, and perhaps for the television cameras, I haven't really taken note, it looks as though it's a full auditorium, even though it's 3/4 full of effigies. And I think that maybe the drama on the field is enough to make us ignore the absurdity of that if we're one of the 25% of the seats that is filled by an actual person. I don't know whether we would feel that in theatre. So here we are, unable to, celebrating something that is, for the first time in 2,000 years, unable to proceed. We all feel it will soon proceed. And I'm very much hoping that it will, because the survivors, it's a terrible word to use these days, the survivors of my first play that was staged when I was 22, professionally staged, which I directed, and it had a large cast, and 9 of them wrote to me recently, 50 years later, more than 50 years later, saying, would you write a sequel for us? A wonderful idea. And I was enraptured by this and have been working on it, but alas, we can't do it. Maybe we'll never be able to do it. It would be a unique circumstance to bring the same people back, the same characters back, 50 plus years older. It's been a very enjoyable venture as an idea, and it was a feasible, real venture when it was mooted a little over 12 months ago. Since then, events have overtaken it and theatre itself. So it's a strange experience to go back to the origins of theatre, where an effigy, but an effigy, I think, unlike the ones sitting watching National Football League games, the effigy of Dionysus was brought into the theatre. He was the only cardboard person, as it were, the only effigy there. But there he was, and he was the most important thing about theatre. It is his spirit that theatre commemorates, and until he was sitting properly in his place, the festival of Dionysus, the festival could not begin, the plays could not start. So it's a genre of social behavior which required an effigy. And in fact, I feel that the effigy of Dionysus is something that we ought to be thinking about in thinking about the meaning of theatre. My first two little talks were had huge holes in them. These are the holes that the history of theatre manifests. We don't really know how to leap from what may have been a village scene to the theatre of Dionysus in Athens, or from Thespis, that apparently solitary fellow going around Greece with his props, let alone to go from the temple ceremony in honor of Osiris, that is a kind of ancestor if we're looking for them. But maybe there is an uber ancestor in imitations at a very early stage of the human race, imitations of actions, of real actions, presumably rather than imaginary ones, reported actions, performed informally for the members of the tribe who weren't there when something sufficiently remarkable happened. But that's my fantasy, and it certainly doesn't supply a link, doesn't stretch its hand across to later times to bridge the strange absence of theatre. And yet, it's not so strange, because the very presence of theatre is the surprise. Other genres have their roots either so much in normal social activity like music, which starts very early in terms of the things that we've found from the Stone Age, which are primitive musical instruments to be blown through, and perhaps there are other forms of musical instrument equally old or older that are not pipes to be blown. But it's very ancient, and music itself inheres in our life, in human speech, in the sounds that we hear that we don't create ourselves, and those that we do create ourselves. There is music out there in the natural scene in our life. So the leap to creating music is not one that we really need to explain or could possibly theorize. Similarly, with poetry and prose, they start so early that we don't know where to begin with them, although we could begin with the theory, quite widely canvassed. I remember 30 or 40 years ago, and for all I know it has either been forgotten or it has become enthroned as unquestionable theory that speech may have been preceded by writing. First we wrote, then we spoke. It seems completely counterintuitive, and yet the argument has been made. Certainly, writing has been, in many forms, in unexpected forms and strange forms, essential to human society as communication, as essential as talking, and indeed the novel is but an extension of anecdotal speech, reported speech, telling one person telling another a story, maybe an invented story, maybe a story that claims to be true but is really invented, and maybe simply a true story. And now we have non-fiction, so-called non-fiction classes in university, teaching people to write, I don't know, more truthfully about real events that they've lived, more seductively, more imaginatively. I have no idea what a non-fiction class would consist of. I'm secretly appalled by the idea, having spent my entire life figuring out how the art of fiction as such, things, imaginary things happening to imaginary people, could be of use to society. And this has kept a boundary, a membrane between myself and people who are being of use to society by telling things that have happened to them, or that purport to have happened to them, that they claim are the true stories that they have lived. An entirely different business from inventing a story, from being a professional liar, as I have been all my life. But to offer a history and meaning of music or sculpture, a very early art, manifesting the need to form wood and stone, particularly stone. I think of the early European Venuses, so called, the female forms that were sculpted very early. This is such an ancient instinct, like painting, that we would hardly be searching for the meaning of painting, although I'm sure we could find many meanings. But one intrinsic meaning I doubt, and the reason that I'm suggesting that we should spend a little time speculating about the meaning of theatre is the question of why does it exist at all? The old philosophical question, why is there something instead of nothing? That is the big question, and we were starting to take a dive into the idea that the function that theatre performs is to present us with the worst in ourselves, so that we could be appalled and moved and implicated and then explicated by some form of closure that will free us from the barbarity that we've observed. And thinking as the members of the audience, we've observed in stick figures in front of us, in the actors whose faces we do not really need to see. They are masked, and they represent the action which speaks so much louder than words. That is the principle on which early drama is founded, nor is it clear that later drama has been able to dislodge the precedence of action. And the absence of action, as in a famous play like Waiting for Godot, is as much a tribute to the presence of action, the failure of action. Action itself is even more present in its absence than it is in dramas where it is the main manifestation of the play. So I'm thinking about what to say, since we're still dwelling in an exploration of what Greek drama meant, what its history is. We don't know how it came to be, and what is its meaning, and why does it still hover over us as it does? Why has it continued to be performed when a not much later form of drama, the Roman closet drama, as it was mostly, seems to have been performed really certainly not in the big auditoria that the Greeks used, but very much in closeted social situations, for which Seneca wrote and many others. And we don't, on the whole, perform their plays. Plautus is the source of much later comedy in the Western tradition, and we might perform him in tribute to that. But it's not as a museum piece that we present Aeschylus or Sophocles, but as a continued question posed to us about the nature of our humanity. So I think we're still there with that question. And if you'll forgive me, I'm coming to the end of my 15 minutes. You may be as glad as I am that I can start again and, with your permission, speak a second video to consider the problem that is still posed for us by the very existence of theatre, in which I think we will find its meaning. So I hope you're safe. I have to say this in this time of plague, and I hope you're warm. Rather, I don't have to worry about you in Hawaii, but anyone who might chance upon this little talk and is living in the same frigid atmosphere, the frigid winds and snow that I am in, I wish you warmth and safety and comfort. And I look forward to speaking to you soon.